Morning, Claude.
Good morning. I'm working on an Andy beard.
Oh, I didn't even recognize you.
Yeah. Came out a little grayer.
Who is he? Oh, man.
Good morning, Andy. I'm not showing myself.
Oh, you're hiding.
Well, I got my hair cut really short. I don't have makeup on. I haven't worn makeup in months, and yeah.
I think we should see.
Here.
Just give it a couple more minutes here.
That's what I was thinking too.
I got to open the files.
And I'm just going to mute everyone until we're ready to go, if that's okay.
All right.
Here's the chat. Well, now I can't hear anything. Uh-oh. Everybody's muted. I think there's a problem. I'm the only one.
No, we're working. We're gonna give it a couple minutes just to see if anyone else came in.
Okay.
Hey, Rod, good to see you. We were just gonna give it 1 or 2 more minutes here just to see if anyone else came on.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. I did.
All right. Well, I'm sure we may still have. Oh, I'm already seeing Carissa's loading, so just let her get her audio working and everything. Bob Schneider. Okay, 1 or 2 more minutes. Sorry. All right, I think we're probably good to get started. I'm guessing folks may still join, but we're more than welcome to kind of get rolling. I thought maybe a good way to start, just because we haven't met for a while and there have been a lot of world events, would maybe be good to just observe just a few moments of silence, in respect and dignity of the life of George Floyd, and really in solidarity for racial justice and justice of all kinds. So, if we just take a few seconds here to just kind of silence and reflect. All right. Well, I know there's never really enough time, but at least we can acknowledge these things. So, I'm James Hannig. I'm the pedestrian bicycle coordinator at DPW. I staff the meeting. Andy Tillman is the chair. So I believe maybe just to start here, we can just do a quick roll call. I think just because, the logistics of a Zoom meeting can get a little complicated, I think what I'll do is just start with the members, and I'll say your name, and if you could just unmute yourself and make yourself known, and then I'll just kind of do the same going through our guests, and it's going to be just kind of the order that people are showing up on my screen. So I guess we'll just start with Andy, if you wouldn't mind.
Oh, where am I? Hi, I'm Andy. I'm the chair. Yeah, can't wait to get started. This is gonna be interesting.
Sounds good. Angie, you're the vice chair.
So, hello everyone, good to see everybody's faces. Thank you for joining. I'm really looking forward to moving the meetings on in this format. So thanks for coordinating, James.
Absolutely. And then we have Claude Krawczyk.
Yes, that's me. It says Susan Krawczyk because I'm using my wife's iPad. So, but I'm Claude.
Very nice. Jessica Sella.
Hey guys, citizen member. Just happy to be here.
All right. Kevin Kushel.
Hi, Kevin Kushel, representing Department of City Development.
All right, and now I'll just kind of channel through everyone who's a guest or staff. So we've got Theodore Tausman.
Yeah, I'm with Osher Lifelong Learning at UWM. So thank you for inviting us. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. We've got our special guest, Amber Miller from AARP.
Good morning, Amber Miller, AARP Wisconsin. My title is Associate State Director of Community Outreach with a focus on Milwaukee County. And thank you so much for having me today.
Great to have you. Kathy DeVries.
Hi, I'm Kathy DeVries, live in the Brewers Hill neighborhood area, and just happy to be on board with listening to what's going on. Thanks.
Glad to have you. Joe Kruschke.
I'm Joe Kruschke. I'm the Department of Public Works Coordination Manager, and looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say.
All right, thanks, Joe. Brett Fuller.
Yeah, Brett Fuller, Milwaukee Public Schools, Curriculum Specialist for Health and Physical Education. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I see it listed as Craig Mertez.
That's my husband, who could not be here because he's in the basement on his own conference call for work. But I am a cyclist, a pedestrian, Milwaukee County resident. That's it. Happy
What was
to
your
be
first
here.
name again? I feel like we met, but I can't remember.
My name is Meredith. I came to meetings.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I've come to meetings before. So.
Yep. Glad to see you again.
You.
Rod Depew. Rod, I think you're muted. Here. I think we're having some issues with Rod's sound here, but.
Try it again.
There you go.
That better? Okay. Hi, I'm Rod Depew. I'm also, as Ted Tausman is, a member of Osher Lifelong Learning at UWM. We've been working with James and the city since 2018 trying to get a safer crosswalk at the Hefner Center on Lake Drive, right across the street from a Jewish school too, where students are walking across. So we're still working on that, and our hope is that coming to this meeting that some of you people will be able to offer some suggestions how we can get this thing moving forward, because we're afraid we're going to get some of us older citizens knocked down by traffic coming down Lake Drive. Thank you.
Thanks, Rod. Yep, and we can provide a little update on that as well. Caressa Givens, I'm so sorry. Caressa is a full member of the task force, and I think I just missed her.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Caressa, and I serve with the Wisconsin Bike Fed, and I serve on the task force, and I'm happy to be here and to hear what's going on.
Good to have you. Kathy Brengos.
Hi, I'm Kathy. I'm from the Legislative Reference Bureau. I just kind of stalk the task force a little bit because I'm interested.
Thanks, Kathy. Bob Schneider.
Hi there, Bob Schneider, an associate professor with the UW-Milwaukee Department of Urban Planning. I'm also part of the Milwaukee Safe and Healthy Streets group, along with Caressa.
Thank you, Bob. Mike Amsden.
Good morning, everyone. Mike Amsden, Department of Public Works, Multimodal Transportation Manager.
Thank you, Mike. And last but not least, Becky Rabatin.
Sorry, had to unmute myself. Becky Rabatin, ADA coordinator for the city, and I want to thank you, James, for taking that moment of silence, which I will actually have us do at my meeting later on with the Equal Rights Commission.
Thank you, Becky. All right, with that, we have roll call, we have quorum, and Andy, I'll hand it off to you. I'm just gonna share my screen to show the agenda, but we can always switch back to different mode, and obviously we'll switch it over to Amber when she gives a little overview of some of her work.
So I guess normally we would approve the minutes from last time we met, which was a while ago, I think. I don't know how voting is going to work on here. James, do you have a good way to do it, or we just call it out, or how are we going to work that?
We could try a voice vote. Otherwise, if people want to type in the chat box, that could probably work too.
Yeah, let's do that. That seems. So if anybody wants to approve the minutes from last time, type it in the chat in a second, and then we'll have discussion if needed. If not, we'll just approve them. Nothing. Oh, there's one. Yeah. All right, is there any discussion? If you have discussion, is there a raise hand or leave a comment? If not, we'll go ahead and vote on it. So all in favor, type aye or approved. That's good, right? All right. So we'll call those approved. So the number 3 is an update on the policy and projects, and we're gonna dive deeper into this later in the agenda. So I'll just kind of briefly mention, we sent a letter of support for the active street closures around the city. I think there was 10 miles of streets that were closed through traffic to give people more space to walk, ride their bike, anything they want, and use more of the city streets that way. And then we did send a letter asking for parklets in the city. There was some discussion at the policy projects meeting about additional street closures or something else that restaurants are trying to do to get people out on the restaurants, create a little bit more seating and a little bit more capacity, but still maintain distancing. So we can discuss both of those later in the agenda. And I think that's about all we had in the policy and projects. We talked about some more additional rapid implementation things, but again, I think we should hang on to those thoughts for later in the discussion. Did I miss anything, James?
No, that sounds good to me. Sounds like you covered the greatest hits.
Great. So let's just jump right into the AARP Walkable Communities program presentation.
Amber, let's see if we can share your screen.
Okay. Or do you want me to just click on my end share screen?
Yes, let's try that.
Okay, okay. Hold on, let me get up my PowerPoint. Okay. I'm just debating which one I want to do. Hold on one second. Let's do this one. Okay, can everybody see it? Yeah, okay. Sorry, I forgot everybody was muted. So once again, Amber Miller, Associate State Director of Community Outreach for AARP. I've been with AARP almost a year. Before that, I worked for a statewide organization, nonprofit economic development, so helping people start or grow their business. And I was there for 10 years and made the leap to AARP. So I work and live in Milwaukee. I am home-based even before COVID. So I'm really excited to be here today. And I met some of you last year, kind of when I first started, so it's nice to see you guys. So I do have some slides, and you're gonna look and be like, oh my God, there's so many slides. I talk super fast, and I promise they're very fruitful, and I will definitely take any questions at the end. So AARP, of course, has has been around since 1958. We really do support 50 and older age group, but a lot of people don't know that actually AARP, you could, and I'm not here to plug membership by all means, but you could be a member at any age. So I am now 41 and a member of AARP. So I think that's a misconception. But we really do advocate for, high cost of prescriptions, healthcare, getting out to vote, the CARE Act. So I do encourage you, if you're not familiar with AARP, to definitely take a gander at our website. So I'm here to talk about, we have an initiative called Livable Communities. Livable Communities start with AARP maybe about 2016. It's really an initiative to get everybody, community-wise, to be able to stay, age gracefully in their home, be safe within their community. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the domains in a few slides. So I'm not going to talk, say word for each slide, so you can definitely take a look at it. So of course, what do people want in livable communities? And this is, they want to be near shops, restaurants, and offices. Would move into a smaller home. Of course, they prefer to live where there's a mix of homes, and then want public transportation options. So when you think of livable communities, there's a lot of things that people are desiring. And specifically, I'll be talking about the walkability part in just a few slides. So this slide, I'm pretty sure we're up to like 450 communities US-wide. So below is the cities and villages right now currently in the state of Wisconsin. So Greendale, La Crosse, Sheboygan, Shorewood, Wausau, Madison, and I think I'm missing one more, but so right now in the county of Milwaukee is just Greendale and Shorewood. And to become a livable community, you do commit up to like a 5-year plan. So the first 2 years is planning, getting together focus groups, doing walk audits, and seeing what in the community is missing. Is it green space? Is it walkability? I think his name is Ron. stated about how like crosswalks are, you know, scary, and is there enough time to even walk across the street? Half the time they give you 8 seconds and you're like running across the street. And then they also, then the remaining 3 years is actually the implementation of the plan. So they'll come up with some goals and then they implement them, and then you officially become like an AARP livable community. So in an increasingly aging population, when you think about it, each of us are getting older every single day. And we have to look at that, I think, in the bigger spectrum of, you know, how are we going to see ourselves in 5, 10, 20 years? You know, can we still live in our homes? If we do we have to maybe make some changes? Maybe there's too many stairs, maybe the cement needs to be fixed so I don't trip and fall. So, you know, when you're looking at, you know, unsafe streets, lack of public transportation options, also like civic engagement, social engagement, making sure that everybody's voice is being heard within the community. So once again, what community amenities do older adults want? So you can see right here, you know, grocery stores, parks, drugstores, hospital. Right now, of course, life has changed a little bit with COVID. So a lot of the 50 plus, 60 plus, 70 plus are still doing the safer at home, but they still want some of the amenities closer to home. So if they can walk to the drugstore and not have to rely on a van to come and get them, are things that we should think about. So in a livable community, people of all ages should be able to go for a walk, cross the street, ride a bike, get around without a car, live safely and comfortably, and then, sorry, I have lighting right here, otherwise it look pale, and work or volunteer. So when you think about it, even maybe just take like 10 seconds and think, does the community you live in meet all these goals? So I don't want to pick on the city of Franklin, but I'm going to pick on the city of Franklin, is when I have my nieces live there, walkability to a grocery store is like non-existent. Most of the city doesn't even have sidewalks. So when you think about it, is that the safest community for someone to age gracefully in? So there are 8 domains of being a livable community. So once again, transformational change. This is not, and I apologize, this is not the slide I wanted to show you. I will send you, I will follow up with the 8 domains. So one is like transportation, walkability, green space, civic engagement, and the rest are slipping my mind, but I will send it to you because I think it's important to review those. And I just remembered it's in my, you could tell it's Friday. I feel like Rebecca right now. So 5 things to do and not to do. So once again, don't assume changes have to be costly. It could be something small and inexpensive. And don't just build a senior center, as we know right now, the county owned, and I should probably put a caveat too, I'm also a commissioner for Milwaukee County Department on Aging. So right now we have 5 owned senior centers, and you know, thinking about how is that going to look, and just building a senior center isn't going to solve the problems. Planning for just one age group, viewing older people as a drain or a nuisance, ignore pedestrians and just design for cars, which I think is one of the biggest issues in the city of Milwaukee. And of course, you know, reaching out to residents, bringing in partners, and also recognizing the value of the 50 plus residents. And I will also send information, follow-up information on June 25th. AARP actually came out with this really amazing report called the Longevity Economic Report, and it's to talk about how 50 plus really impacts our economy and that everybody should be heard. So I will send you information. We're going to have a virtual offering on that. Borrow ideas from others. I'm all about that. And then understanding that small changes can make big difference. So when you're looking at those. So here are the 8 domains. So, and I won't read each one, but outdoor spaces and buildings, green space of course is really important. Transportation. So this goes for your feet, so walkability. So are the streets safe for people to walk on? Is the crosswalk safe? I think it was January, I actually did a walk audit with Shorewood. So they wanted to see, were the streets plowed? Were they salted? Was there enough time for people to get across the street? And I was, I guess, very surprised on the lack of shoveling, plowing, salting. It was astonishing. So I think those walk audits would be a really good way to engage some of the community members. And we do have information I can give to you if you're like, let's just do a walk audit. What are people seeing in their community? Is it walkable, bikeable? And also, is there access to other transportation like busing? Housing, affordable housing is a big issue. That's one of our domains. Social participation, isolation, especially right now, is on the rise. It could be for all ages. It doesn't have to be 50 and older. It could be a 25-year-old. But thinking of ways to engage people, check on them. How are they doing? What are some of their feedback? Respect and social inclusion. Once again, everybody wants to be valued. So what are ways that we can do that? And, like surveying and how they're feeling the walkability. Do they feel safe? Is there enough lighting? Civic participation and employment. Volunteering. Once again, we're really big on volunteering and engagement at AARP. Communication and information. That's important also, as much information as you can get out to the community that you can share with folks. Otherwise, and we also have to realize not everybody is tech savvy. Not everybody has access to Wi-Fi or computer. So how are you going to reach the demographic and the groups that don't have those technology offerings, and how are you going to get them information? Community and health services. And then that is our website. So this particular website has everything about livable communities. It also has information on placemaking, so low-cost ideas to make your community a little bit more livable. It could be revitalizing areas. It could be a community garden. All of this information is free. You do not have to be a member. You could be any age. But if you're interested in learning more about livable communities, or like how could we make it more walkable? How can we make it more, friendly for our biking friends? I definitely encourage you to look at this to this website. And I would love, more than anything, originally the city of Milwaukee was on my docket to like stalk this year, but like, oh, let's be a livable community, but the timing, of course, just is not right. So, and then here's my contact information, but I can also open it up for questions. I went through it kind of fast, so.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Have you started to see any changes in the housing or how people are accessing medical, if it's more telecommute or
teledoc?
Yep.
Yeah, definitely teledoc. And what's interesting is before the epidemic, most insurances would not pay for all teledoc. So from what we've heard, we've seen an increase of people using that. But then on the flip side, we also heard a lot of folks having to put off like surgeries and infusion and injections because of that too. So it's kind of like a catch-22, where it's like they're trying to make it accessible, but on the flip side, it kind of did stall. When it comes to housing, the one thing that we've noticed is that more folks want to stay in their house longer. Because most of the time maybe their house is paid off, but most of the houses they live in aren't friendly for somebody to age into. So they have like a lot of stairs. The outlets are too low, so when they're plugging something in, they fall. But we are going to be, and I'm actually in the working group for AARP for accessible dwelling units. So when you think about like in-law suites or building kind of the in-law suite behind the house, so I could send you information on that. I think in Wisconsin, we're a little bit lucky when it comes to housing. I know like AARP New York, AARP California has different input because it is super expensive to live there.
I have a question or
Sure.
something, Rod Depew.
Hi, Rod.
My wife and I moved from downtown Milwaukee 5 years ago to Shorewood.
Okay.
So we're a good example of, and one of the reasons we moved to Shorewood was specifically some of the things you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
We're just down the street from the health center, from the library.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Center, very walkable community.
Mm-hmm.
I guess my question is, where do you stand with Milwaukee joining?
Yeah. I stand alone, Rod. I stand alone at the moment. I think right now there's just too much going on, even before COVID, and then it was the election. So it's like election, COVID, and then everything that's kind of going on now. So I think in my perfect world, they might be on my radar for next year. My focus, I think, for this year, and once again, that's if possible, would be the city of West Dallas. I think the city of Milwaukee is a huge beast, but I think it's doable if we get the right people at the table that can really like move things along. I do think the city of Milwaukee, the city of Madison just joined earlier this year, so it's realistic. I just don't know if for this year. But thank you for your comments about Shorewood. That's helpful for me to know that.
Looks like Carissa has a question.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for your presentation, Amber.
Oh, yeah.
So actually, that was one of my questions that Rod brought up because
Yeah.
I remember when the Bike Fed was working to pass a complete streets policy in 2018, we had discussion with, I think, different representative through ARP.
Correct.
And that individual seemed very open, but there was a discussion about the fact that there wasn't a lot of work being done on the ground on behalf of ARP in the city of Milwaukee. And I do want to, like you said, outside of the pandemic, I think probably summed it up well, is Milwaukee's a beast and there's a lot of moving parts. And I do highly encourage you to, circle back when you can. We have a lot of new alder people that I think would be a lot more just ready to fire on all cylinders. I have two more questions.
Yeah.
So, I do know a lot about ARP. They do provide a lot of great manuals and align themselves very close with Complete Streets. We recently just finished our community challenge grant. We submitted that, by the way, with a community organization.
I know you did.
There are a lot of resources.
I saw it last night.
There are a lot of really great resources that the AARP does provide, even in cities like Milwaukee. So, I guess it's kind of just in your opinion, like what can the AARP do besides, be able to just provide these grants or manuals in cities to like move city policy, like the Complete Streets policy, up the ladder and get people to pay attention to, for instance, people aging in place.
Yep.
And two, I don't know if you've heard, but our Department of City Development commissioners retiring, and a new individual.
Oh, I did, because I'm very familiar with Rocky in my last job, so yes.
Yes, there's a new individual that's being considered by the name of Lafayette Crump. I'm wondering if the AARP is aware of this, and essentially, are they, able to connect with this individual, learn what their agenda is, and connect that to the work that they do in order to better serve the aging population and this community as a whole.
Okay, so let me start off before I answer two questions, and then tell me if I'm going over on my time too, because I can talk all day. One is, I do feel like you might see a different, I'm a little different than maybe my predecessors, even though you may not have physically seen me yet. I'm very in the community grassroots. It's unfortunate because of COVID, it has stalled a lot that I planned on doing this year, but we still, still move forward. So I do invite anybody on the phone call to email me if you would love to set up a separate call or Zoom video. I would love to, talk with you one-on-one also. The first question was pretty much like, what could AARP do besides like grants and when it comes to like policies. So the function of my job is like more outreach, but we do have an associate state director of federal advocacy and an associate state director of state advocacy. So if there is something that you want us to look at, maybe sponsor, put up the flagpole, I encourage you to email me that. I cannot say I'm privy to everything that's out there, including our advocacy associate state director. So hopefully that answered that. I know we did have, we definitely were sponsoring like the CARE Act, but if it comes to anything else, if you could maybe contact me directly about that. The second question, yes, I did. I was very familiar that Rocky was retiring. I did see the new person's name, and because I am on like every email with the city. And I love that idea that I will reach out to the possible new person and see if I can set up some time. And I'm also anticipating doing that with the new county supervisor also. And I do love, in my last job, I worked very closely like with the mayor's office, the alder people, but I do know there are new alder people. So Carissa would love to maybe touch base with you one-on-one on some of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, you're more than welcome to. Obviously land use is still like a huge part of transportation all in one thing. And I'd like to see the city invest more and more into neighborhoods. And
I agree.
I think that, what does it matter whether it's a health commissioner, DPW commissioner, any kind of commissioner? I think it's just more important, especially in these times, that we know and understand what those people are prepared to do.
Absolutely.
Demand transparency. Because Rocky held his position for 14 years. Is a really long time if you think about it.
Yeah,
and that really can affect our whole system, and we got to get it right. So I hope that groups like AARP can try to bring those issues raise them to the top to support people.
And it is also about the education piece. Not saying this presentation was the panacea by all means, but I also think it's like educating people, and hopefully they're willing to listen, because I don't think probably 95% of the political figures in the whole state of Wisconsin even knows about livable communities and how important it is. And this right here is just like a small puzzle piece of like the bigger picture. So I could not agree with you more. And I will do everything I can. I like to be in the soup. Like I said, it's a little harder now because I don't mind. I'm more of a grassroots approach, and right now because of this, right now AARP, I already worked from home, but all of our employees throughout the nation we have to work from home till September 8th. And then we usually do a lot of in-person events and outreach, and that has been suspended for the rest of the year, just because our demographic is kind of that age group that is more susceptible to COVID. But we're still thinking of creative ways, and especially with it being an election year too.
I have a question for Amber.
Mm-hmm.
Amber, you had mentioned that with Milwaukee, it's so huge and it's a behemoth. Are there other cities across the country that are large, maybe over 500,000, that have been already gone through that process and have a designation as a livable community? And this is the second part of it, was it maybe approached from going within certain neighborhoods within the city itself?
Yep. So yeah, and I assume this is Rebecca. I recognize the voice. it's interesting you say that. So originally when I started, and I was like, oh, City of Milwaukee, there's not going to be any problem. So originally when I did start, I did try to connect with certain political figures in Milwaukee, and it just like didn't move. And I know the mayor's assistant personally, just like nothing moved. And that's why I'm like, you know what, I'll give it a rest for a couple months. So I did get it, okay, so I think it's Houston or Dallas, one of the really bigger cities. I originally thought, you know what, why don't I, with the City of Milwaukee, I will pick 2 communities instead of the whole city. So I think I identified I was going to pick, I think it was Muskego Way, and I think like Harambe, if I'm not mistaken, because I'm familiar with both of those areas with my last job. I did get it approved to work with those, and this would kind of be similar to what they did in Texas, but then the world kind of shifted, and one of the bottlenecks that AARP has right now is there's only 6 people for the whole Livable Communities program and over 450 cities. So so they just asked if I wanted to do it community by community, that it would have to be started for next year. So it's not, it's possible. And my preference would actually be to start with 2 neighborhoods, because I think if I can get the buy-in from the communities and then show the impact of how great this is, I would assume, I would hope to think the City of Milwaukee would hop on board.
All right, looks like we have a question from Kathy DeVries.
Hi, Kathy.
Hi, Amber. Great presentation.
Thank you.
And I had a similar question that Rebecca did, but I also wanted to ask you about the involvement of businesses with this initiative and what you've seen, since maybe businesses can be helpful in terms of moving forward, or state and local representatives. If businesses, in fact, within a district like Muskego Way, or like Bayview, where my business is, and I bike to and use the bus, what could we do as businesses to be supportive or start on a small scale?
Yeah, that's actually a great idea, and I'm embarrassed to say I didn't think about that, even though I came from a world of small business. I think where I was coming from is like, I'm going to start with the alder people, because the alder people usually know what's going on in their district. But really, I agree with you. I should have even stepped back and said I should start with some small businesses, because they know also what's going on in their area. So I actually love that idea. And if you'd be willing to maybe brainstorm with me, I'm not saying you have to volunteer for Bayview unless you absolutely want to, but I would love to maybe pick your brain a little bit on that, because I love that idea. And I feel like most of the 8 domains of AARP livability does affect the whole local ecosystem, so which includes small businesses. So would you be so kind to reach out to me, Kathy, since I don't have your email?
Sure, I will
Thank
do
you.
that, Amber. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea.
And I'm over 50. So I think
even if you weren't.
And we moved back to the city to live in the city and age in the city. So
nice. Okay. We've actually noticed that more people are moving to the city because everything's more accessible. If you live out in kind of the farming area, it's hard to, walk or get around anywhere. So
agree.
Yep.
Angie has a question next.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Okay.
Hi, Angie.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you, Amber, for the presentation. It's great to hear. And these concepts are so logical and have been around for so long on this level and nationally. And the more we hear it, the better. I just wanted to give a little perspective. I'm not sure that you being new or anybody else on the task force knew. Long ago, there was an organization I was involved in called Wisconsin Walks that promoted these very things. And also UWM's urban and regional planning, of which Bob Schneider is part, did a lot of studies on various streets on walkability. KK being one of them. So there's a lot of past work to help promote this, and you know, the more the merrier. Initiatives come and go, and it would be great if you know, eventually more of these things were actually sustainable and cast into concrete, so that they wouldn't have to bubble up and be a new initiative every couple of years.
Yep.
So I'm excited to see if that could work out. There's a lot of people in various communities around the city and state that really advocate for this.
And it's interesting you say that. When you hear the concepts, you're like, well, duh, you know, like that should already be in the neighborhood. And sometimes I struggle with some of them, but you know, even when you're driving, how most of the roads don't have like bike lane, and you just think of like, well, you know, like how can we get there? And to me, it takes a village to like raise a village. So it's like gonna take more than me and you, and if we could get the right people at the table. And the city of Milwaukee, it's just I guess I'm a little sad, and because I had such a great experience with my last position with the city, I thought it would be different, but or the same, but it, you know, I was mighty mistaken. So
yeah, also no, I think that we've come a long way because of the Bike Ped Task Force as well. And the pedestrian plan that the city recently did, I think is pretty good. It's just a matter of will and resources to implement all of those things. So yeah, it's a concerted, constant effort. And we have other distractions right now, I agree, but
yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Great, thank you, I appreciate that. Any other questions? Always feel free. Like I said, I'm in Milwaukee, so you know, accessible. So if you have any ideas or comments, I would love to hear. And especially like Angie, who has like some history with maybe other initiatives that I'm not familiar with, I'd love to hear about, you know, how they started, and maybe if it did or didn't work out, what is something that maybe I can learn from. So, but I appreciate you guys having me. If it's okay, I might just linger on the call just to hear what you guys are talking about, but I invite you always to reach out to me. And then if I could do one small, just shameless plug is, last month, we as in my coworker who used to work at WEDC, so we have same background, started this pilot grant program called Small Dollar Big Impact. Every month we're awarding $1,000 grant. So this is different than the AARP regular challenge grant. Our next round of funding is going to be due June 15th. So what this is we're looking for like placemaking ideas. We don't want to fund anything that's already going on, like new and creative ways to impact your community. So I will, as a follow-up, just send out a link, and this could be this is statewide, but of course I'm selfish and would love to bring the money back to Milwaukee as much as possible. This last round, which is our first round, we got 68 applications. I was shocked. I thought maybe we were going to get like 8. So I'll send that out. Once again, it's up to $1,000. It has to be a quick project, which means that the turnaround time is 60 days. There'll be some wiggle room. So think about like murals, community gardens, stuff, you know, stuff like that.
Sounds good. You're absolutely welcome to hang out for the rest of the meeting and come back whenever for our rest of the meetings.
Okay,
rest of the year.
I would love that. It gives me a really great perspective, and I've been very open with people. I don't know how to ride a bike. So I come from, my 6-year-old niece is going to teach me, she said. So I come from a different perspective, but also the walkability factor. So
yeah, sounds great.
Thank you.
I'm already kicking around some ideas, so maybe we'll be reaching out to you for policy committee. So
we'll love it. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much, Amber. And we can coordinate you and I just to kind of share some of the links and resources, and I can just resend your contact information. And then I also, if you have those details on the, was it June 25th, 26th event, I will share that with the group as well.
Oh, the June 25th, correct. And we're doing that in partnership with BizStarts and then UWITA out of Milwaukee. So I will send you that also, and it's free, so.
Awesome, thank you so much. All right, back to you, Andy. I'm gonna share the agenda again.
Yeah, let's just go right down to what's the next item is. Hold on. The discussion related to the COVID pandemic and Active Streets Initiative. And that, I'm assuming, is going to blend somewhat seamlessly with 6 parklets and the Active Streets for Business. So we'll start with the 5 and see what happens. So I guess, is that you, James, or who wants to lead that?
Well, I mean, I guess, how did you want to frame it? Were you looking for like a summary? Did you have specific questions? Mike's available to speak to some of it, but we didn't have any formal presentation prepared.
Oh yeah, well I don't. Yeah, just maybe more of a summary of that's just the streets that closed, right? And so we closed 10 miles of streets to traffic to open it up for exercise and moving freely. Is there more planned? Is it working? And what's the potential to maybe permanently close some of these streets or keep them more as a bike boulevard? Because I know we closed the bike boulevard somewhat early for those too, so.
This a little bit here. So for those who aren't aware, the city and the county partnered on this Active Streets initiative, which was launched about a month ago now. County Parks, who I don't see anyone from county on the call, so I'll speak a little bit on their behalf, but not too much. They have prohibited automobile traffic in several parks and opened up the streets to people walking, biking, and rolling to provide more space to safely get out and get some exercise in a safe way while maintaining physical distancing. And at the same time, the city has been, thank you, Caressa, for sending the website there. The city has also reduced traffic on some residential streets along 3 different corridors currently to, again, create space for people to more safely use the street if needed to walk, bike, roll, or get outside for physical activity or even for transportation purposes. And we really try to focus on connecting people to parks or trails. So the 3 locations that are currently active are Custer Avenue on the northwest side from 64th to Sherman, the Fratney and Wright corridors where we have the Bicycle Boulevard projects, which will be constructed soon. So Fratney from Meineke up to Keefe, Wright from 2nd Street to the Oak Leaf Trail or Beer Line Trail. And then the 3rd location that's currently active is Washington Street on the near southwest side, where we have just started the planning and engagement process for a bike boulevard that will be constructed in the next couple of years here. And Washington Street is from 20th Street on the west, connecting to the KK River Trail on the east. So speaking specifically for the city corridors, I think generally we've been pretty pleased with how things have rolled out. We've seen a lot of positive responses, not many negative responses. We've definitely received some input on how to make things better. Thanks to countless volunteers and other staff within the multimodal unit, we're constantly monitoring on a daily basis to see how things are working.
Mike?
Go ahead.
Can I ask a question? Just about the whole volunteer thing. How is that working with having the volunteers monitor? Because, it's kind of a personal question because I actually signed up to monitor Galena Street, but it's not open yet. And
Right.
So I was just kind of curious how that's working out or if there's going to be changes.
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah, no, it's great. And I'll touch on Galena here shortly as well. Thank you, Kathy. That's the 4th corridor that we're hoping to roll out soon. But so the volunteer monitoring, so Kate Reardon, who's not on the call today, she's been leading that effort. And thanks to the Bike Fed and many other community partners, we've been able to basically fill the 3 active corridors as well as Galena almost every day with somebody going out and walking, riding, or even sometimes driving along the corridor just to check to make sure the barricades and the signage are in place. And then there's a pretty handy dandy Google form that Kate has prepared that just ask very simple questions at each intersection to make sure that things are in place, and if they're not, to note, what may or may not, be in place and what the problem might be. And then we are monitoring, and then, internally on the staff side of things, we're checking that every morning and sending any needed replacements or changes to our street maintenance crews to go out there to fix. And so far they've been, as soon as we see something, street maintenance has gone out usually within the next day to make any updates or changes that are needed. Galena Street, you mentioned, is the fourth corridor, and it's kind of a longer stretch connecting Washington Park, Tiefenthaler Park, and King Park. We've been having some really great conversations, thanks to the Bike Fed, with many community partners along that long stretch, and really trying to figure out how we best engage as many people as possible so that people know what this initiative is, so that people use it and understand why it's there and want to be using it. So we've had one big kind of community partners call already, and then working with Alderman Stamper's office, we're going to be having another here in the next, hopefully, a week or two, and then brainstorm further on how to get the word out a little bit more before rolling that one out. But overall, pretty positive. I'd say, we have about 5 miles of active streets on the city right now. We have no plans to remove them, even though it seems that every other restriction has been removed within the state at this point. We really feel that providing safe space for people to get outside for physical activity is absolutely critical right now. So it's kind of generally where we're at.
Mike, some cities have made those changes permanent. Are we considering that or moving towards it even?
It's something that we've talked about, and I think we are doing that, for example, on Fratney and Wright, where in Washington as well, where we're choosing locations where we have other plans in place to make more kind of capital intensive improvements. But, our hope is that, if this is successful, and if resources allow going forward to expand this elsewhere throughout the city, it's a pretty, as currently stands, it's a pretty low effort initiative. So yeah, we absolutely could see this expanding if resources allow.
All right. Carissa's up next.
Thanks, Mike. And so I just, something that hadn't been mentioned, but I think is really important to note, and I'm just gonna float this over into the chat, that one of the reasons why this is so important additionally and across the country, where trail counts increase exponentially. I think the other day when I was on Twitter, I saw that the DPW had posted a 171% increase on trail counts from this time last year. I know the weather has been a lot nicer, but basically, if you follow their Twitter or social media, they post updates on trail counts, and they have really grown exponentially, anywhere from, I think, like 30% up on up. So I think that regardless, to echo what Mike is saying, like regardless of how many things are opening right now, we're still in a pandemic, and our trails are still going to be very full. And I think it's important for neighborhoods that are not close to trail access to have spaces for people to recreate, just to get out and move without jeopardizing their health and safety, especially in Black and brown communities, where COVID-19 has hit these communities quite heavily. Our community partners have been very explicit about the fact that there's a lot of trepidation in going outside in general. So I think it's just really important that the city continues to maintain that knowledge that this can really help those communities specifically. And you will note that the corridors that have been chosen are in many Black and brown neighborhoods, which I'm very pleased to see. So we also created some yard signage that people can who live along the corridor can get from the bike fed that articulate that it's a shared street and what type of traffic, automotive traffic, is allowed, and then how to safely social distance. The city of Milwaukee has posted some very large signage on like where the corridors cap and probably some of the side streets, I'm not sure. Of course, you know, people who enter in either one of those sides will probably be more aware of the fact that it's a shared street as opposed to people along the court or like in the middle of the corridors that are chosen. So we have those available and volunteers have been putting them out. And I am working on rolling out another round of signage that has like a text to survey message on it. So hopefully people can provide a little bit deeper feedback on, to Andy's kind of questions, deeper feedback on whether they like this street in terms of it being only available to local traffic, and whether they could imagine their street being like this in perpetuity. And I'm trying to link it up so that you can get entered into a drawing to win like a grocery gift card or something. So that way there's an incentive to actually participate in that survey. And I'm sure people could really use some food supply right now. So that's kind of where we're at as of yesterday. I talked with Safe and Sound about helping us provide a match for that incentive. So yeah, that's kind of the update on our end in terms of how we're trying to raise the profile of the event, or I mean, not the event, the initiative.
Yeah, I should say, if I didn't explicitly say it, thank you very much to the Bike Fed for everything that you're doing in the community to really to build awareness and to really try and involve people in this. I think it's great. Thank you.
Looks like Amber has a comment too.
Oh, if you don't mind. I don't want to keep plugging things, but when Carissa said this, I was like, oh my goodness. So on June 23rd, so this year we actually did a collaboration sponsorship with Rails to Trails Route of the Badger. So June 23rd, we're actually going to be having an online panel with them to talk about how you could still use the trails, but how to use them during an epidemic. So Chris, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I do think it's needed. And once again, I know online offerings aren't for everybody, but at least, you know, the information's there. And then just one more thing, and then I'll shut up. I told you I could talk all day. In my prior life, I actually worked on the Beer Lane Trail with Riverworks and Julia Taylor. So it's interesting when you said that, because that was like many years ago, and I was on it for about 5 years. So I'm very familiar with it. Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
Carissa, I was wondering, how is the survey being distributed?
So I have not procured it yet. I had a meeting with my coworkers and with the city earlier in the week just to discuss how we could not only support the initiative on the front end, but try to discover some ways to evaluate the initiative. So I'm open to collaboration and peer review, but I would imagine that it would be also a Google form that someone could take on their phones. And I'm also open to a mailer if it's possible or feasible, or an e-notify, all three, especially, I mean, specifically for those people who live along the corridor, because obviously we'd like to know if it's something that, you know, they could really benefit from immediate or directly.
Anyone else have a question or comment? All right, let's move on to the next item, is the parklets and the active streets for business. So I don't know when it was, I think it was April. I sent a letter from the Bike Fed to the city asking for any business that would like a parklet to be fast-tracked through the process and any fees associated with that be waived. And it was received, and I think at the same time other people were starting to ask the same question. So the city had started planning on what can restaurants or businesses do to use street space, and how would it look? So I know we've been making a plan, but I don't know where it landed or where we're at today with that.
Right, I can speak on this topic. Again, this is Gerald Kruschke. I'm the DPW coordination manager. This active streets for businesses has come a long way. So the city had two programs that already existed, which one was sidewalk cafes, and a second was parklets. So what we started to do is the sidewalk cafe fees were waived as part of a licensing from the mayor. So then what we did last week, or was it 2 weeks ago? I don't remember the exact date. The mayor then waived the parklet fees. And the parklets basically are those wood structures. You know, it's almost like a wood deck, really robust, kind of expensive, utilizing parking spaces to expand out to outdoor seating for restaurants. So we waive the fees on that, but what we've got now is the active streets for businesses is to tie those two existing programs into a more robust, creative, expanded use. So if a restaurant or business would like to expand in the parking spots or possibly the travel lanes without building a structure, that's what this kind of initiative is pushing forward. So, you know, if you have barriers around, just add more tables because of reduced capacity. We've worked with, you know, I'll give compliments to Mike's multimodal group, the licensing department, the city attorney's office, DNS, the health department. So there's been a lot of input put forth, and sometimes it's been as it was released. We went to Public Works with it on Wednesday. The rules and guidelines are a little tight, but I think as the health department releases more restrictions, I think this program will be utilized a little more. But yeah, that's kind of where we're sitting at this point. We go to council on the 16th, so hopefully we have a one-stop shop to help restaurateurs and help people expand into the right-of-way.
So first question I have is about the travel lanes. Will that affect deliveries, transit, that sort of thing? I'm not as worried about cars and, you know, privately owned cars as much as transit and.
Yeah, so currently what we're looking at, we've had a lot of people request just using parking lanes, which doesn't really affect a lot of the MCTS or a lot of the deliveries. There has been a couple of areas, east side, downtown, third ward, that have requested to shut down entire roadways. And when we go through this review process and start the permitting process, all those will have to take into consideration to allow businesses not to be harmed from having deliveries or the bus transportation or other modes of transportation to be harmed. So it'll be a robust review. Hopefully, be quick, but hopefully the county and the bus system will be on board with some areas. We have notified a lot of the business improvement districts that if you are on certain, you know, transit lines, that will be a concern and a possible rejection. So everyone's kind of aware, at least from the business improvement district. So hopefully it'll be successful.
Okay. Perfect. I have another question, but I bet you Rebecca's going to ask the same thing, so I'm going to kick it over to her.
So Gerald, excuse me, I'm sorry about that. As you know, you and I and Karen in the past have been talking about including accessibility components within the city ordinances for parklets as well as outdoor cafes. I was kind of surprised that that went forward, and I hadn't heard anything about it until I got a notice from an automatic notice that was approved. So I had been looking for good pictures. I didn't know how you folks were going to approach it in DPW as far as your guidebook on that. And so I went back through what I did have and just put it as bullet points and made things very brief that I can forward along to that I feel is very necessary to be addressed when putting in parklets, outdoor cafes, or having the cafes out in the street. So I like to have that incorporated. I see that there's, it's still a draft phase. There's a waiting for attachment from the health department, but I feel that these particular bullet points that I have for accessibility need to be included as well.
Yeah, I think we received that the other day, Rebecca, and we totally agree. So as part of this, if a restaurateur is going to expand in the right of way, all ADA accommodations will have to be met. So we want to have every user be able to, utilize that space, not just, one particular group. So, and we can involve you in the review process as well too.
Yeah, that would make me feel comfortable. There's a few things that actually enlarges the space. It's actually more than 6 feet when you look at the building code for seating. That makes it just a little bit larger than 6 feet, but I think 6 feet, I'm not going to argue with that.
I have a question about obviously the like parklets really help not only expand capacity for restaurants to serve people, but probably can alleviate any space where they usually put tables directly on a sidewalk. I'm sure that that's still allowed, and I'm wondering with a greater opportunity to expand your business out into the street, is there going to be very, very clear and thorough instruction on how to ensure that there's a clear right-of-way for pedestrians, especially people with adaptive needs? And also, like, how will you regulate whether someone is actually abiding by ADA standards with so many restaurants in the city? Obviously we don't know how many people will sign up, but how do you ensure that those people are actually doing those things?
So one of the guidelines we put as part of this new permit is usually, there's tighter corridors where you can have 4 foot wide. I think city ordinance currently is 5. As part of these tables and chairs, we're sticking with 6. So we're actually opening this up a little further, even from street light poles, any obstructions in the right of way. We're trying to be consistent with the social distancing guidelines of 6 feet. So this will open up. I mean, people's sidewalk cafes might not be what they were. You could have someone who had 2 or 3 tables there. It might just be 1 or maybe 2. So I think this will help widen it out. And just like every other situation or the other program we have, it's kind of complaint driven. So we have, as part of the permit, someone's going to submit their plan, seating, what the spacing is in between that, and that's how we're going to go through the approval process. And if there has been a complaint, and I think Rebecca's got plenty of them that she forwards over to DPW on a daily basis, then it'll be addressed. And if someone's not following guidelines, these permits will be revoked. So the key here is to follow the health department. We want to maintain social distancing and make sure that everyone has a clear path in the right of way, and help as, so it's a whole entire package here is what we're trying to do.
Thank you.
Becky had one more comment, looks like.
Sorry about that. So Carissa brought up, how is that enforced? And one thing that I've been talking with Gerald about, and in the past with Karen Detmer, is having the city ordinance change. Right now, we personally can't do anything if restaurateurs are not complying with the ADA. We don't enforce the ADA. But if we have something in our ordinance saying, these are the guidelines and we're specific about measurements in that, then we can enforce it. There are other communities within the state of Wisconsin that are doing that. Baraboo, for example, has actually closed down restaurants because they're not following the guidelines, and some of that has been in regards to accessibility concerns. And then the other issue I do want to bring up, and this was initially what I was going to comment on, when I sent an email to Gerald and to Mike and to James about the file going forward and being approved by the Public Works Committee, I had mentioned on their a PowerPoint presentation about the tables that they were showing in the pictures would not be considered accessible for a wheelchair user. we should get Amber's picture from her PowerPoint presentation, that very first one of Postman Park, where it's got 4 legs going straight up. It provides the width required for knee space as far as the depth and the height. So that's a good picture to use. Believe me, I spent a lot of time looking for pictures these last couple of weeks, and that's a good one that Amber has.
Absolutely.
Any other questions or comments?
I have one. Is this something that DPW is looking to continue after things have returned to some sense of normal, or is this just COVID crisis?
I think the intent of this program is to go through the 2020 season and learn lessons from this. There might be areas where this could be long-term. So as a pilot program, I mean, the first thought is to just have it tied into COVID. But if there are areas that end up being shut down and this works and successful, I think it's an opportunity we could possibly take parts of this and keep it long-term. So.
Could I?
Yep, go ahead.
I'd like to make a suggestion too. I live on Plankington Avenue, along the river, next to the rock bottom, which we love. We hope is open again soon. But we've had regular issues in the past with them about accessibility through their patio. They kind of take over the place. Well, in the past, a year ago or so, as a requirement of their liquor license, they were required to put down basically something on the sidewalk showing that this was available for pedestrians. So what we had suggested as neighbors is just buy these feet that you see in a like in a factory that says this is where you walk. They did that at the rock bottom. It worked, I think, very well. And it wasn't completely perfect, but as far as Rebecca's concerns about people being able to get through, this is once we do get reopened and people are crowding places again, which probably won't be until next summer, the idea that those areas have to be accessible for pedestrians is important. And I think that should be a part of the permitting process, that there be some markings as to, this is a pedestrian area and this has to be reserved for pedestrians. You can't let your customers just linger and mingle on those areas.
Yeah, I think, Chloe, we totally agree. So as in the guidelines, there's like 21 different guidelines tied to this. So there's a lot of rules and regulations, and one of them is basically showing what outdoor space you're using, if it's with ropes or if it's with barriers or it's planters, for the space for them to use for eating and dining, and then keeping the pedestrian corridor open. So as part of the plan review, we do have something like that right now.
If I may, I don't know if some of you have seen this before, but some businesses are able to say that you're not allowed to bring a firearm into their business, and they'll put like a sign on their window as an example. I would advocate for each business having to have showing proof, whether it's a photograph or something coming out to say, not only do they have like physical guides as to where to stand, where to walk, etc., but it's important for these businesses to articulate to their customers that this is a shared space and that this is how you maintain yourself. So if it's like whatever, if they want to source a sign for themselves, but I mean, I think it would be, I don't, somebody's probably going to have to walk me back and say that this is not enforceable, but it's probably something that, like, for instance, a bike fed or AARP could advocate for, is like, do you want to have a sign in your shop or like right outside your door that says, this is a shared space, or this is a space for people, so please respect that walkway, almost as like a solidarity act.
If I could make just one really quick comment here. So Kevin, to your question, I can't necessarily speak to the overall plans for continuing after COVID-19. Not really in our shop exactly, but I will just kind of remind the task force that parklets were included in the pedestrian plan as, you know, a way to promote placemaking and really improve livability and health for neighborhoods and commercial corridors. So I would just kind of encourage task force members to kind of keep that in mind.
Kevin, has there any been discussion in your department about long-term plans?
For parklets?
For, well, parklets, distancing, how things are going to look, parks, spaces, anything.
More than anything, we're looking at like how to do public outreach with public distancing.
Sure.
So one of the things that I think is important is most of what we've relied on has been the internet and everything, and unfortunately not everybody has access to that. So if we can find better ways of public outreach that doesn't necessarily include internet, but that is able to be safe and healthy, then we should be advocating for that as well. But I'm not entirely sure if that's something that is really relevant for this.
Sure, yeah, right. I suppose it's too early to start making infrastructure plans on what we're doing so far, so.
Right.
We'll see how it goes, I guess. Last question for me for Gerald is you mentioned the season that I know the parklet ends in November. Is that what the season plan is, or is it weather based if we start getting snow and then things have to come off the street for plowing, et cetera?
The goal is to have this as a November 15th to tie into the parklets. Obviously, if weather plays into it, I'm not sure how many people want to sit in the parking roadway if snow comes. So
sure.
We'll see it as it gets closer to winter.
Okay. Great. Anyone else before we move on? All right, so let's talk about the update from the Safe and Healthy Streets. Is that Carissa or Bob, or both?
Yeah, I usually do the update, but anybody can fill in the gaps if they'd like.
Could I just and say I'm sorry, but I have to cut short. I have to get out of here and get to another meeting at 11. So good to see everybody.
Bye, Claude.
Thanks, Claude. Take care.
Bye-bye.
So for some of the people in the virtual room that don't know about Safe and Healthy Streets, Safe and Healthy Streets, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that I currently am the manager of that particular program with Bob. Safe and Healthy Streets started out as a group called Path to Platinum, which is a group that really focuses on aligning themselves with the League of American Bicyclists, bicycle-friendly communities. They have like an index where they rate your community or your school or your business as to how bikeable, just like if somebody would rate a business for how like a walkable or city, a walkable city. And so that group was called Path to Platinum, and that's in line with the League of American Bicyclists Platinum Standard for bikeable communities, excuse me. But I came in and flipped things around and changed that group's name to Safe and Healthy Streets, just to allow for that group to have a closer identity or association with transportation or active transportation advocacy. But the group still very much is aligned with those or bikeable community standards. So fast forward, this group made a strategic plan to get some funding in order to implement our Complete Streets policy. So that means like upping engagement style, and working on a lot of other processes and policies alongside the Department of Public Works. So really working on system change within the city of Milwaukee. And so I've been working on that for, I guess this is like my second fiscal year or my second season. And there's been a lot going on, but the most up-to-date information is, I hate to say it, but I'm sure many of you are going through the similar thing, as a lot of our activities that we have planned for the season are not happening anymore. But those activities are things like sort of similar to walk audits. We call them safe passage walks, where residents are invited to walk corridors, walk, roll, however they get around before and after projects happen. And that's intended to increase collectively experience what it's like to be on the street. And also residents can meet the people who design their streets and actually have conversations with one another about, you know, their abilities, barriers, and also just for the city to get more detailed and refined information on really the experts, which are the people that live in that community. And unfortunately, we're not able to do a couple of those safe passage walks this summer, and I'm really bummed out about that. But we have hosted a community discussion on transit use just, I think, a couple of weeks ago with the Zeidler Group and the Milwaukee Transit Riders Union. And I believe that we're aiming to do another and just try to get a little bit more creative with that. So that's kind of the, I guess, the most public facing activity that we're doing. Additionally, I work with Mike Amsden, and I work with Amy Oath and the Department of Health, Michael Stevenson, on a Complete Streets implementation team right now. And we're currently, we just finished building our Milwaukee Complete Streets Health and Equity Report with Bob here. And hopefully that will be successful for years to come. And the team is currently working on a couple of things. I've charged myself with examining our high impact paving program and how it could be, how more tenants could be added to the process for more equitable outcomes, especially in prioritization in neighborhoods of greater need. And that was most likely going to culminate in a memo to be shared with the commissioner of DPW and other people in leadership at the city. And then we're also looking at our Complete Streets Committee, which is already formed. Andy's a part of it as a representative of this group, and examining how it can be diversified and opened up more to the public. And also potentially examining how Milwaukee could adopt a Vision Zero plan and support a Vision Zero plan that most likely and surely should happen, where like mayor and other higher levels of leadership would take on that initiative, which means making a commitment to it and investing in it. And also, very importantly, calling out reckless driving as a public health crisis in the city of Milwaukee, because that has yet to be fully identified, which is, I think, really important to a lot of community groups around the city at the moment. So I know Bob has put together some evaluation materials as a model to work with the city for systems change, and I can let him talk a little bit more about that. But that's what's happening on my side.
Yeah, Caressa, fantastic summary. Obviously, for everybody, Caressa does a fantastic job leading our efforts with safe and healthy streets. So I don't have anything too much to add there. But yes, on the data collection side, I guess from a broad perspective, there's no substitute for personal engagement with residents like we've had through the walks that Caressa was describing. But we are collecting data through surveys this summer. One of them we've already implemented in the North 27th Street corridor to gather some data prior to the city's project that will be implemented there in the next month or so, to get input back from local residents. So we got 70 responses, some of them online, some of them through a mail survey. We'll also be we'll be mailing surveys to a random sample of residents in all 15 Alder districts and also have an online survey that's going to be asking about people's opinions of their neighborhood streets and see what people think in terms of physical activity, perceptions of safety, and potentially ideas that they have for improving those streets. So they're also connecting to their perceptions of their personal health. So I think that'll be interesting to see those results once we get them. These are some of the data collection activities that through the grant we're establishing now, working with the city so that the city then will continue these into the future to monitor progress on complete streets and other multimodal initiatives. I do want to give a shout out to the multimodal unit and Mike in particular for helping with the survey distribution, because that's been a big task as well.
Bob, looks like Kathy has a question for you.
Sure.
Hey, just thanks, Bob and Carissa, for all the initiatives. I lived in the city of Chicago when we did a lot of this adoption, and it was really exciting. It's such an unusual year just in terms of traffic, and 2020 just because of employers and people basically staying at home, and large employers within the city still are sort of tapering people in. How is that affect sort of, this is kind of an anomaly? I mean, the good news is people can see how it can be different. It's sort of an interesting opportunity to call out what could be different, and then contrast that to sort of what it's been. And having just moved back to Milwaukee 2 years ago, just sort of interesting to kind of contrast two large cities, but not from a personal perspective, but more like community perspective on what the opportunity now is given what we now know. I mean, as we were talking about streets closures, et cetera, how could this work to our advantage?
Yeah, thank you for asking that, because there's an important part of the survey that we added to reflect and really recognize that COVID-19 was changing many things. We were about to send out the survey in early March when things all changed, and like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Well, as it turns out, it was an opportunity, and so we added two questions. One asking people how do you perceive your neighborhood streets have changed since COVID-19, and the other one is basically how have you changed your own personal behaviors, especially related to walking and biking. So those are going to be some very interesting responses to see, both in the 27th Street corridor survey and when we put out the citywide one. Certainly things are different, so it'll be interesting to get people's perspectives. So from the data collection point of view, it's a really interesting opportunity, and we'll have more to say on that later, I think.
And just to add to that, and just one of my work perspective is I work for Wheel and Sprocket. I had marketing for them, and we have sold the industry has sold record bikes. As you well know, you can't find a bike to save your life to sell you. I think we're gonna have to start casting steel and carbon to help make bikes or something in the back room. But with that perspective, I think we have a new group of people for advocacy. I know the Bike Fed, it's not lost on the Bike Fed, et cetera, that are seeing streets in a different way. I think within the city and the county, it is an opportunity to help with some of the businesses that are helping get product out to the outdoor, if you will, but also advocating for the outdoors and how to use us to your advantage. So just gonna put that.
Just one other thing to add on the survey is a very small but important note. Caressa has been very involved in making sure that we have a Spanish version translated, and so that's also going out along with our English versions of the survey this summer to all their districts.
Anyone else?
Bob, it sounds like, and Angie said that she's wondering if you had a copy of the survey, if you are ready to share that draft with folks at all.
Not quite yet. Very soon, you will be seeing the citywide survey come out. I think we're hoping to get it out here in June. So you'll actually be able to see the link, take the survey, provide your input, forward it to other people. We have the survey going out that way to get to as many people as possible, but we also have the random sample that goes to a particular targeted group so that we can make broader inferences that way and see if there's any differences between sort of maybe the advocacy community that gets it through online connections versus people who just get it coming to their mailbox.
All right, thanks, Bob. I think that's all the questions, so let's go to the next one. Membership and reappointments. And I'm guessing James will have to have some things to say about that one.
Yeah, and by all means, I don't necessarily need to lead this, but we do have a number of terms that technically expire in the next month or so. And I know we've visited this in past meetings, but there are a couple that are also technically already have expired. That's not to alarm anyone because people remain in their positions even after the expiration date. It's just a matter of getting sort of the formality. But I think it's just worth noting that we have a couple of vacancies or potential vacancies. So one is Mitch Hankey had submitted an application, and we were aware that it looked like he was going to be appointed by the mayor, but we yet to have hear word of confirmation from the mayor's office. So I can follow up on that one. We still have the DPW representative position to fill now that Karen has resigned, and I know that we have at least one other current member that has expressed interest in resigning. So there's probably one DPW opening and at least one resident opening. So just kind of wanted to put that out there. People don't necessarily have to share this with the group, but if you want to follow up with me and Andy, one, whether you have been participating and have interest in joining the task force, I can get you more information on how to submit an application. Or if you are a current member and are interested in resigning for whatever reason, you can reach out to us and we'd be happy to kind of just walk you through that process. And third, if you're interested in remaining on the task force and your term is ending, let me know and I can just kind of contact the mayor's office altogether in terms of getting you reappointed and whatever sort of confirmation is needed. So I'll put that out there. If the group wants to discuss, by all means.
I guess I'll just add that we did reach out to some of those names that you've seen on you're seeing on the list that you haven't seen in person or on a call, and they all have responded that they do want to continue. So obviously, Officer Rufus is probably busy this week, and I'm not sure what happened to Nicholas, but he said he had additional free time and maybe just got busy today. So we should still be seeing those guys soon. So.
All right, that sounds good. Thank you.
Sorry, my cat's yelling at me. That's why I'm laughing.
My cat does. He talks when I talk. I do have a question about this. I know who Mitch Hankey is, but I'm not sure if other people do. And I know that there are, when we were provided with information about the makeup of various types of bike and pedestrian advisory committees, you know, and learning about how they function, I do see a significant hole in membership appointment and our evaluation process for that. Like I said, I really respect and admire Mitch Hankey, and I actually did submit a letter of recommendation for his appointment, but I can't help but think that it's really important for us to, you know, understand even just know like why this person wants to join when they submit an application, if there could be a membership committee or something like that, and you know, how has that been addressed in the past, if at all? And it's okay to just be like, I don't know, because that's how the things go sometimes.
Yeah, so I'll admit, like even now, almost 3 years into the job, that process has always been a little murky to me. There is an application like form and process, and it really, at the end of the day, is at the discretion of the mayor's office. So they have in the past relied heavily on input from the Department of Public Works in particular. I don't think that's an official like mechanism that has to be followed. I think that's just, as a task force, kind of the procedure that kind of fell into place, if you will. Honestly, I think this probably is part of a broader conversation related to the bylaws and ordinance and broader membership that the task force, or potentially a new kind of version of the committee, could and should include. And I honestly think that, you know, as we hopefully all value, like, the body should reflect the community. And I think when we have those discussions around the bylaws and enabling legislation, we should really be being mindful of what sort of number and requirements, like membership requirements, would help encourage that reflection. So I think in the meantime, it's been just kind of, unfortunately, the status quo of just following the kind of pretty laissez-faire process that was in place, but with the mindset of making sure that people are appointed who will be engaged and are enthusiastic about the topics. So there's certainly some vetting, but I'm not sure how much it might have to be kind of baked into the legislation, but I'm not sure how much a body is typically involved in recruiting new members, or at least appointing new members. So I think that's something that I definitely want to talk with Mike and others at, like, you know, the city clerk's office, I think in particular, just to understand that process a little better.
Yeah, I mean, so just for some people who haven't been around, like the reference, we got, I think we hit a little bit of a wall in terms of changing legislation for this group. And I'm still a huge proponent of putting this group into a different position so that they are like under ordinance. And so I'm here advocating for that. I also think, you know, it being a mayoral appointed group, not seen or heard from the mayor in all the time that I've been a member of this group. And I think if it's the mayor's bike and pedestrian force, it would be nice to be recognized or connect with him in some way. But to be perfectly honest, I feel like if we had, you know, like sat down and had a conversation with his office and discussed why it's important for the group to be diverse, it's why it's important for the group to have some appointment power, I don't think that he would be upset or anything like that. I think he would most likely be pleased. So I really wish that would happen soon, because I think that, you know, like I'm looking at this ship thing and I'm thinking, like, if I weren't so plugged into what or where I am right now as an individual personally, I'd look at this and I'd be like, who is this guy? Like, and like, why so the mayor gets to decide whether this person is okay to be in this group, but nobody here really knows who that person is. That's kind of weird. It's like he's like Oz or something. He's like, he could appoint anybody and that person might suck, like, for lack of better terms. I mean, like, so yeah.
No, it's all very helpful. So, you know, I guess I'll encourage you, Andy, as the chair of the bylaws and ordinance, you know, subcommittee, just how you want to kind of revigorate that conversation, and I'll certainly bring that back to our team and figure out what we can do to kind of help with the process and be more transparent.
Sounds good to me. Yep.
Can I ask a question, James?
Absolutely.
Oh, great. I will do my video too here. So you said, if you would refresh my mind, that you'll check into how other councils or task forces operate, and if it's a larger rule, an umbrella rule for the entire city. I think it'd be helpful to know how we fit in or follow along maybe potential guidelines for all such bodies, if that's not already been done.
Yeah, I think that's been part of the conversation looking at the enabling legislation, but yes, we'll add that to the list for sure to make sure that we're kind of looking at what other committees and commissions are doing.
And I say that simply because I'm sure we're not the only ones that probably think about this. And so what is our part of the policy committee, but so maybe that's already being considered. So thank you.
All right. Any other questions? All right, so moving on, is there any community dialogue or upcoming events that we should know about?
I have a question about a particular community event. And I don't know if there's anybody who's heard of this, but I got an email from the Office of African American Affairs last Friday about a bike drive that's happening all summer. And the county and the Department of Health and their office are doing this together. And I messaged the individual back asking a lot of questions because their bike drive style is a little unique in the sense that they were accepting bikes and giving them out simultaneously, which just by experience, it's just different than how I have seen them occur. And I was just like, you're contacting me the day before this is launching. I don't even know what to say or do. But I like the idea. I've always appreciated Southside Bike Days bike giveaway. However, I actually did not feel that comfortable in sharing the information because we also have a mobile bike repair group that could help them, but I'm like, is there, there's a Spanish flyer, is there a liability thing happening, XYZ. So I'm just curious if anybody's heard about it or if like, how can we support it moving forward? Because like, as somebody said, like, there's not like somebody the other day on Facebook was like, I need a bike. And somebody tagged me on it. And I'm thinking, oh, maybe this person could get a bike from this bike drive. But from my organization, I don't want to send people away with bikes without like making sure that they're safe. There's information about how to bike safely, XYZ.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything about it, but I agree that it needs to be safe and, managed.
I mean, I think it's managed. I've looked at, there's a volunteer form set up and everything. It's called just Milwaukee Bike Drive. I don't know, maybe the Office of American Affairs, if you go their Facebook page, they might have some information about it. There are volunteer sign up, etc. I had a lot of questions. And I also encourage them to connect with Free Bikes for Kids. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of Free Bikes for Kids, but they can easily work with government and entities to do very like successful giveaways. But the way those function is you have a donation period, you have a maintenance period, and then you have a giveaway period so that you know that, for instance, a kid can walk away with a bike that actually works and that is safe for them, and they, just have some other information that goes away with them.
Sure.
So if anybody knows about that, tell them Free Bikes for Kids is a good way to get some support.
Sounds good. Anyone else?
I don't know if this is the place to ask, but I'd like to pick the committee's brain a little here. Reason Ted and I came to you the meeting was to see if you had any ideas or suggestions on what we see as a problem of getting a crosswalk on Lake Drive moving forward. We've worked with James and Mike and met with them, and I realized we're in the COVID mood. We were told in several communications that this would be done this summer. Well, obviously we don't need it right now because we're not having classes at Osher at the Hefner Center. But we will be having classes. We just don't know when, as all of us don't know when the next step is. But we are looking, I see curbs being put in all around UWM. And I was, it's been 2 months since I've communicated with Mike and James coming up next week, and I was going to contact them again, but since they're both here today, perhaps they can give us an idea of when we're going to see. They're going to narrow the lanes down. That's the plan. But the question is, when will that be done? Next time we know, the snow will be flying, you know. And but any ideas we would appreciate from the committee, a situation like this. Say we've worked on it for a couple of years with Nick Kovac and
if I can stop you, Rod, I have an update. So thank you for joining the task force today and for the question. I appreciate your patience for sitting through the whole meeting too. So yeah, we have an update. So the Lake Drive Road Diet project has the green light. We have a contractor on board, and the plan is to begin installing the pavement markings and signage as we had previously discussed, with bringing the cross section down to 1 lane in each direction, adding bike lanes, and the parking as was previously shown, and the high visibility crosswalk markings, so those continental markings. Plan is for the contractor right now in mid to late July. We're expecting that work to happen. It's one contractor doing a number of locations of different types of safety improvements across the city. So I think that's 3rd or 4th on the list. So it's just a matter of how their progress is in the first few weeks of June here. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled. It's not going to have the flashing beacons and signage that we've previously discussed, but we're still very confident that it's going to improve safety, and we're going to be keeping a close eye on it, both after. So that's where we are with it.
Okay, and if for some reason, we hope it works as you do, if come September and the narrow lanes are in, and we come into the fall and find out it doesn't work, then you're saying the city would reconsider putting flashing pedestrian crossing ahead. I mean, at the crosswalk where you push the button and the lights flash. They would consider that.
It's certainly always on the table. We'd want to make sure we evaluate. I can't commit to it right now, and we'd have to make sure we have resources and everything. But yeah, if it's an appropriate treatment and we still see a safety issue, we'll definitely evaluate that and have conversations with you and the others.
And as you know, resources, the university has, at the very beginning, has said they would share in those resources. So keep that in mind if you do need resources. Okay, I appreciate it, James. You don't think it'll go any later than September then, huh?
No, definitely not. We would have some problem if that's not happening by then. So.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Rod. Andy, back to you. If there are any other remaining questions, comments?
Yeah, I think I'd just wrap up quick because we have to get out of here by 11. So thanks to everyone that's still here. And for the next meetings, we'll send out some emails. I'm assuming it'll still be Zoom in August. And look for a policy and project subcommittee coming soon, and potentially even a bylaws committee. It's get that going finally. So, yeah. Thanks everyone. Have a good weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.